like to turn to now another, I think, very inspiring panel, which will talk about the COVID Coalition, which is a concept created by one of the panelists, Governor Bob Wise. We are very honored and delighted to have you here. Bob is the CEO at Bob Wise LLC and venture partner, president of the Alliance for Excellent Education, and ex-governor of West Virginia. Together with Governor Bob Wise, we also have Norihisa Wada. Wonderful to have you here with us, a senior vice president and chief operational officer of EduLab Japan, also a partner of a collaborator of us for many years now. And last but not least, Tali Arif, Director General of the Braha Foundation, an important and significant support for innovation in education. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And Governor Wise, would you like to start off by telling us about the COVID Coalition?
So thank you, Cecilia. And let me also just note that while I've left the Alliance for Excellent Education, that's a former position, I am a co-founder of the Global Science of Learning Education Network, and it dovetails, complements exactly what is being discussed about today. And you've already given me the idea to come to Mindset to see about doing a joint webinar on the science of learning for change. But so like several on this that will be heard throughout the day, and I know are watching, I've spent most of my life in some kind of political advocacy. I was 24 years an elected official in various capacities. I've been a leader of a nonprofit that advocated for education change. And so I tend to see things, and I think what Betsy and David were talking about is incredibly important. But what is the public's attitude about a gift? Because the reality is that whatever system we're working in education across the globe, the reality is that at the end of the day, a political official, someone who's in the political process, will be making the final decisions, whether it's funding, whether it is policy change. In my country, the United States, 14,000 separate school districts, ranging from 200 in one district to 1.2 million in New York City, all of those decisions are made by elected school board members. So this is a political process in some way, whatever country you're in. So therefore, we developed I developed in working with the Hunt Institute in the United States, I developed the concept of the COVID Coalition or the COVID constituency. We issued a report last week called the COVID constituency. What are the priorities that it looks at? And this is our premise is that for the first time, both in the United States, but this is true across the world, that there has been this shared experience that creates the climate for the kind of change that we're talking about with Unboxing School. And because I believe that the political process is so important in this, what is the appetite that both the public has and in turn policymakers, because policymakers will be determined by the public attitude. And also, I've always loved the concept that Betsy developed of the gift. What are the gifts that the public may be looking for? How is it that I hate showing up at a function and bringing a gift and then finding out that it's not something that people wanted. And so what is it that is the best gift? So let's look at some numbers on the shared experience. When in March of 2020, when the pandemic really erupted, we had as many as 1.5 billion students out of school across the world, somewhere between, depending on estimates, 66 million, somewhere around 66 million teachers affected. And but what this did was permit, and I remember Andreas Schleicher of the OECD saying this on a Global Science of Learning webinar, that this created a shared laboratory because for the first time the world was in the same situation. And so in the report that we did then for the with the Hunt Institute, which is U.S. oriented, but I want to also think that many of the findings are applicable to the globe. What we observed is that over the last 2 years, there is a COVID constituency that has been created, and we used a lot of polling and survey data to do that. We looked at the COVID coalition or constituency has a much greater appreciation because of the homebound experience, has a much greater appreciation of the teacher and what the teacher does, has a much greater awareness of the importance of technology, and in many cases was frustrated by not having enough connectivity or technology, understands the importance of childcare because somebody had to stay home and not go to work if they were able to go to work to take care of those children. And finally, and I want to get to this in just more in a moment, all of a sudden personalized learning, meeting each student where they are, as opposed to just one style of learning for all children. Personalized learning became much more real. In the United States, so this joins with unparalleled funding that the federal government has put in to address COVID. And we find that across the world, I believe something like 60% of nations have increased education funding in 2021 in order to address COVID. Obviously, differing levels of funding and different responses. And during and what we also believe is that during the next 3 years, critical decisions are going to be made across the globe that will affect learning and teaching school. But what is, I think, most encouraging, and this is a report that came, I believe, out of OECD, is that at least 60% of nations say they do not want to return, national leaders, policymakers, they do not want to return to the normal that they knew before. Yes, we want to get our children back in-person schools because of those social benefits and other things. At the same time, we understand that simply going back to what we had before is not acceptable, particularly at a time when there's been this great sacrifice. So emphasis on for the first time, a shared experience. Yes, it has varied based on your economics, based on where you live, but at the same time, homebound, greater appreciation of teachers, greater concern about social, emotional well-being of children, as well as parents and teachers, and greater emphasis on technology. Some concerns with this shared constituency is that about 1/3 of the children across the globe, students, do not have adequate access to remote learning, either by connectivity or by devices. And so that's going to be a great challenge. But if there is ever an opportunity to take advantage of public will, and in many cases, additional resources, this is the time. And that's why Unboxing School, in my mind, is so important.
Thank you, Bob. I'm not sure, is Narisa, yeah, here we are. Is Narisa with us also?
Yes.
Thank you, Bob, for this initial presentation. I think one of the things that I feel are come up from your concept of coalition. One is really the aspect of a shared experience and our understanding of this global lab and what we can take out of it. I'm still and I'm taking from Avi's presentation at the beginning is the understanding that we will not be able to change going one school at a time, or what we used to think of as bottom up, or innovation from the field. I think one of our understandings is that for this change to come up, for this innovation to happen, we have to create something that is bigger than, you know, small changes in each and every school, and that has much more force. And Narisa, in the discussion that we had earlier, you gave an example of your government creating kind of widespread changes. I told you as you were presenting it that I am jealous, but maybe if you can tell us a little bit about that, and we can comment on the kind of changes that maybe are needed to be able to really change habits. Somehow I feel that habits are hard to get rid of when you create very small steps into those changes. I'm curious at your point of view on that.
Okay, sure. Tari-san, thank you. Just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Nori Wada. I chair several of the steering committees for the Ministry of Education Japan in terms of education reform, especially in the higher education. And my role is to advise, what will be the innovative educational system, curriculum, database in Japan. Well, so during this COVID-19, I really like the term COVID coalition as well as, shared laboratory. And I think the most tectonic shift that I found out of being a chair in the steering committee is that in the past, most Japanese looked up to our educational system in a passive way. We were more receptive. We trusted our education system. And I guess we still do. But during the COVID-19 situation, all of the schools were closed and teachers were not there. So all of a sudden, parents, students, most of the stakeholders were left to self-help. And they couldn't really rely on the governmental system. So they relied heavily in the community, other parents, as well as, friends and family. And what this brought to the government itself is that they realized that in this new big laboratory, they needed to be more open, more inclusive, to have a lot of stakeholders join their process of decision-making in terms of where to fund money, how to use money. And also another shift that the government did was usually in the past, these funds were focused in the areas that already had results. So it was an extension of the past. But now they came up with a new rule saying it's okay to fail. We need to learn from failing. However, the third part is very important, is that data and technology plays a huge role here. So all of the failure, all of the success, all of the data needs to be stored so that they can do an evidence-based policy management. So these three were a tectonic shift to the government's attitude towards education in Japan. They were more in the past proactive, saying, we know what we're doing. But today, they have shifted their position saying, we want to help. We can't solve this by our own. So I think this was the gift that the COVID-19 kind of brought. And it goes along with what the OECD is saying in terms of learner agency. Now the steering wheel, the future of learning is you, the learner itself. It's not like given to you. You need to learn how to steer your life by learning.
And part of my reaction to this and to the concepts that Bob, I'd like to address you now for a comment on this. Part of my I don't know, somehow the association that comes up for me are the parents. And I think one of the, and Narisa, you of course spoke about it, and the fact that I think we're looking right now at the parents to be more proactive in the process of learning, a process of teaching, the process of learning. And for me, Bob, and here I know that you have a very clear statement about that, I feel that maybe as a system, we have to create a sense of empathy towards parents, towards families, towards this larger environment of learning, rather than just looking at, you had spoken before about, teachers and how we should, and respect for teachers and for schools. And I'm thinking maybe we should widen that concept of who is teaching and how learners learn by creating a more empathetic outlook at, families, at communities, at various places where children learn and where adults learn, for that matter.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. This is all about public engagement. And anyone who has ever attended one town meeting, whether running for office or as part of an official or just attended, knows the importance of engaging with the public and hearing what the public has to say. Because when you're doing massive policy change, if you're trying to change one habit, much less a number of habits, then you're going to have to be able to explain why. And while what I believe the COVID Coalition is about is saying we want change because of what we've just lived through, but at the same time, that's a very broad statement. And when you get down to what are the changes, it's going to be able to engage with them. So I think you're absolutely correct. I also think this is an excellent time for governments, wherever they are, to look at how to reorganize their delivery of services, because this isn't just about education. When what we found and what we've seen across the world is how many people had to apply for basic services, human welfare, medical care, mental health counseling, how many use technology now to apply for human services. This gives us an excellent chance to actually redesign our services that hopefully are in support of families and education. And I might add, it also gives us a chance to redesign those services in a way that they are more effective in how they serve people. At the same time, they are more cost effective too. So this brings the most liberal and the most conservative sometimes together.
And maybe for the kind of final minutes that we're here, can we try to think, I'm going back to Betsy and David's discussion, which I thought was very inspiring. I mean, can we try to think of each of us maybe of a gift that we would like to give to schools, to learners, to the communities as we think of them? Marisa, do you want to begin with one change, one gift, one concept that you would see as something that you would like to pass on?
Sure. So I would say the gift is there is many ways of learning. In the past, it was the school, but now people understand that there's so many options. It's just the most important part is that whether you can hold your own steering wheel of learning.
Wonderful. Bob?
So my gift is taking something that has been a very academic term in the past among educational advocates, personalized learning, and now making that a gift to families who know very well that there's been learning loss with each of their children, and that their children, when they return to in-person school, are going to be in much different situations. So the ability to say, we're going to reorganize so that we're able to address that learning loss. And I can see Betsy right now saying, but what are we going to tell the teachers? What we're going to tell the teachers is, while we're going to be supporting some changes in pedagogy, we're also going to be taking a lot of things out of your backpack that you've had to bear in the past. And that this is a way that we will all move forward together, and the teacher will be more effective, the student will be, and the parent will be much more involved.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And I want to add one more gift that was that I saw that came up in your report, Bob, and I just want to put it here because it wasn't discussed, and that is seeing the learner from the day he or she is born. I think that one of the things that we forgot in the process of schooling are the very, very young children before they enter school. And if we look again empathetically to the families as a part of a very, very broad system of learning and teaching, then we will also see the very young infants from the first day that they're born, and our ability to create really researchers, real learners from the data are born. If we do that, then we can create a long-term change, I think, in the way we see the process of learning as a whole.
In Tali, just in closing, I just have to issue these words. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I don't think we will see it again. The combination of crisis, and in some cases resources, and a coalition that says, I'm ready for some change. It won't come back again. We've got to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tali, Nori-san, Governor Wise, and taking the last sentence of Governor Wise. Leaders like you three actually affecting policies, we do have hope that this opportunity will be taken to change for the better. Thank you so much.